Browns post-draft evaluations, and where we go from here. Now on the React. Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of the React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic and splendid Pete Smith. We've got a jam-packed show for you tonight as we react to the React of the Browns 2025 draft and look at their direction going forward from here. So what's going on, Pete? What's good with you, sir?
At this point, it's just about going deep dive on all the prospects and all that entails, which is a lot of work, but sort of the fun part of the process just to see exactly what the Browns are getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's, off the top of the show here, I did want to go through the UDFAs. And just get your thoughts on some of these players. I'm assuming you've looked into some of these guys for a little bit here, right?
Yeah, there's a couple that I think have a legitimate shot to make the team.
Okay, let's start with edge rusher Aiden Huntington from Tulane. He is 6'1", 281-pound edge rusher. First 3 seasons at Kent State, before transferring to Louisiana Monroe in 2023 and Tulane in 2024. He had 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss with the Green Wave. Thoughts on Huntington?
He's an athletic freak. His athletic testing is, for his weight, on par with Myles Garrett. At 280, really? Basically 280 pounds, he ran a 4.64. Wow. He did a vertical jump of 38 inches. His broad jump, I think, was like 10'7", and that puts that's a better athlete than Shamar Stewart. And unlike Shamar Stewart, who the Bengals took 17th overall, he actually did his agility testing and was good on agility testing. He missed a bunch of time this year with injury, so the 4 sacks don't look very good. He was still basically second on, like, the leader on the team at 4.5. His pressure rate was absurd. And pass rush win rate and all that stuff. So the only thing that hurts him is the missed time, the level of competition, and then the fact he's older. I think he's 23, so it's not like it's a real older, but those are the drawbacks. And you got him for free. To me, he has the capability to line up and down the line. I think they're just going to put him on the edge and say, just go. And that's all he's going to do. He's going to be a designated pass rusher. I thought to myself when I saw him, a much freakier Sam Kamara. I've heard jumbo Jannard Avery. He's not here to do anything else but rush the passer and maybe help on special teams. And if he could do those things, that would scratch an itch that I was disappointed the Browns didn't get to in the draft at edge rusher. But he has Jim Schwartz style defensive lineman all over him. I had watched him early in the draft process, and then just sort of lost track of him because he's a guy that was targeted for the All-Star circuit, and I think injury caused him to miss that, but was able to get back for his pro day testing and just absolutely crushed it. And if you've seen him, he is just chiseled. So he's exactly the type of guy you want to take a shot on.
Perfect. Good to hear there. Offensive tackle Jason Ivey from North Carolina A&T. What do we know about him? 6'5", 287, played tackle.
I don't know a whole lot about him other than his athletic testing was pretty mediocre, and he's part of LaCharles Bentley's agency. But
okay,
I can't say I've watched a whole lot of HBCU football this past year.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that they're bringing him in.
Yeah. Then they have cornerback Lamarian James from TCU, 5'9", 193. transferred to TCU from Old Dominion.
So he played. He despite the fact he was 5'9", he played exclusively on the outside, and in the past 2 seasons, he's had 23 pass breakups combined. So he's a man cover corner, somebody who's going to get a shot to try out in the slot. He's at least interesting, and it's one of those positions where, yeah, you typically do find those guys, are going higher and higher in the draft. But there are always going to be guys that teams can find that can compete in that spot, undrafted. It's the only thing that really hurts him is it's just an incredibly crowded room. So that's the tough part.
Yeah, many slot cornerbacks have been found via UDFA, so those guys are always good to bring in. Another offensive lineman here, interior offensive lineman Cameron Johnson from Missouri, 6'3", 305, 2 years at Missouri.
I don't know much about him other than I don't believe he's signed. I think he's just a tryout invite.
Yeah.
So I didn't look a whole lot into him. I only looked at the guys that I know of that were at least reportedly agreed to contracts and the reason I didn't look at the tryout thing, not that it is simply because he could just not show up. The other thing is with tryouts, depending on the way rookie minicamps are sort of set up, if he were to go, you can go to as many as you want because you're not signing anything. So you could theoretically go to one before another and sign with a different team. So I didn't put too much effort into the tryout guys other than get more bodies in here because they didn't draft one, and see if you can find somebody that Mike Bloomgren likes.
Okay. Dom Jones, cornerback, Colorado State.
Press corner. Has really good athletic testing except for speed. In a lot of ways, and we did this with out of Western Kentucky. They didn't get him initially, but they brought him in later. And he had the same sort of athletic profile as did Martin Emerson. Their speed is not great, but their agility makes up for a lot. And in this guy's case, Dom Jones was really explosive. Additionally, he has 38.3-inch arms. He's I think he's 6'1" and change, 195 pounds. So he has all the makings you want of a guy who can press and compete in that element. So, whereas Lamarian is going to be probably competing for the slot, this guy's going to most likely be exclusively competing on the outside.
This next guy is one of the guys I looked up, tried to find as much as I could on him because he was the only wide receiver they brought in. Gage Lavardian from Lavardane, maybe that's right. South Carolina. Now he started at Southeast Louisiana before transferring to Miami of Ohio, before transferring to South Carolina in 2024. 19 catches for 223 yards and a touchdown, but had rather dominant games in the MAC. One where he went for 273 yards in one game against, I want to say, UMass, I think. The highlights are on all over YouTube, but 5'9", 180-pound guy. Yeah,
so he's a guy where he played for Miami, Ohio the year before, and he led the team in receiving yards. So then he attempted to do what a lot of guys are doing and transferred up and just couldn't crack the lineup at South Carolina. So the Browns are bringing him in on the basically on him being, what he did at Miami of Ohio. They have had this weird habit, or weird or not, it just they've had this thing where they keep getting somebody who is basically 5'9", 5'8", and fast, and seeing if they can make something work with that guy. They've done this a couple times. I believe South Carolina, they got a kick returner last year, or a guy who's just super fast and did absolutely nothing, but they just wanted to see
2
him.
catches.
But he's just super fast. Now, this guy's not quite as fast. I think he ran 4.4, but nevertheless, Yeah, they're just trying to see if the Miami of Ohio element of this is worth anything, because South Carolina had a pretty good set of weapons, and he just didn't crack that lineup for whatever reason.
So he'll be intriguing a little bit. They bring in another long snapper, Brent Mastick, or Matisic, from BYU. Is that just competition, you think, for our guy, our local kid?
I doubt it, only because he was rated. I mean, as much as anyone watches long snappers, I believe, according to Dane Brugler, the 5th rated long snapper on his board got drafted. Matisic is the 3rd rated long snapper on Dane Brugler's board. So, it's certainly possible that, that Rex Sunahara just beats him out and is better because Rex Sunahara did a nice job. But if they can get Sunahara, I think is close to 30. If they can get a young guy who can really do the job well, they're going to run with it because, they had Hewlett for, I think, 35 years at long snapper. So if they can do that again, they're going to happily do it. So, I mean, it's notable that they brought in somebody who is at least reputed to be good enough to potentially, win a real job.
A couple intriguing guys here. Donovan McMillan from Pitt, safety. He has some intriguing highlights and some film and stuff. What do you think of him?
Say that again. Who?
Donovan McMillan, the safety from Pitt.
Yeah. To me, he was one of the best players on Pitt. He's a Florida transfer. He led the team in solo tackles for 2 years. I think he's an intriguing combo safety with size. Has done a lot of play in the box. He's played deep. I mean, Pitt plays that cover 4 scheme. Pat Narduzzi likes to run. And look, say what you will. There's a part of you that has to give the Browns a little credibility on their ability to find undrafted safeties. So, I mean, again, here's another player who I was aware of early in the draft process and just thought he was intriguing. His production is at least interesting. His athletic testing was pretty good. So if you can get another D'Anthony Bell type guy out of him, somebody who can play on special teams and fill that role, the Browns, I am fully confident, are going to sign somebody else of some credibility. But they still have that spot to fill that D'Anthony Bell occupied. And I think McMillan's going to have a really good shot. And this fits into that whole thing, as does the Aiden Huntington thing, where the Browns sort of almost like leave a spot on their roster. So when they get to undrafted free agency, it looks really attractive to good candidates, because, for all the talk about like what do undrafted rookies want, the first thing they want and their agents want is the ability to make the 53-man roster, because going to a glamorous team doesn't mean anything if you're not going to get a job. So one, the Browns have real credibility when it comes to undrafted free agency, because they keep having guys come out, rookies make the team from that standpoint. It's not like guys are coming here to waste their time. So Donovan McMillan, really interesting. I'm very curious to see what he does, because when I watched him, I thought he was pretty good at a number of things. I just don't know if he excelled at any one thing where you said, like, D'Anthony Bell, once, obviously I had never heard of West Florida when he got here, but obviously when we saw him get on the field and do stuff in preseason, it became pretty clear what he does. I'm very curious to see if we get to that point with McMillan, where it's sort of like, it's very clear we know what he brings to the table.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting with McMillan, and we should watch the free agent market for safeties too, right? We should have an eye on that.
I mean, look, I said this beforehand. There are a couple of positions where I thought, look, if you're a wide receiver running back, you should probably sign before the draft, because I thought your opportunities are going to not be great afterward. Safety was the one where I was like, there were a bunch of guys holding out for real money, and I was pretty confident they could hold out for real money and they were still going to get it. Because, look, there are guys, and I know there are people who are unhappy the Browns didn't take like Xavier Watts when they took Dylan Gabriel. I think the safety class was horrendously bad. And the NFL basically agreed with you for the most part. If you thought that, even Nick Amenwari, who was like,
he fell.
Was a really well-regarded safety. And a lot of people thought I had him going in the middle of the first round, didn't go until round 2. And I think some of that was just he has a very specific fit, but it really felt like slim pickings. And even Malachi Starks, who's like nominally the first safety, and everybody's going, oh man, the Ravens got another one and all this stuff. I think he's a very fine player, but I just did not see a whole lot of great opportunities to address the safety position in this draft. So I think those free agents are very comfortable waiting and getting paid eventually.
There's a couple other names that look like they're on tryouts here, but then the one guy that jumps off the page a little bit is this D'Artagnan Tinsley from Cincinnati. Looks like a monster of a man, 6'3", 340.
He's 6'3", 340. He has 11.5-inch hands and 34-inch arms. He's just gigantic. I don't know what he's gonna do, but I think he played predominantly left guard. He's not the offensive lineman that I'm most intrigued by. It's the kid from TCU who has played 4 different positions. He played every position but left tackle. He's played really well. Has played 5 years of basically starting football, has really good blocking grades, and his athleticism checks out really well. He's just going to be older. But of all the guys on the offensive line, and I didn't sort of look at him with a whole lot of seriousness. One, he does profile to be a guard or potentially a center. But, I think I'm curious to see if the Browns sort of like nudge him to center more in this scenario, because I just look at the guard position, and unless Tevin Jenkins gets injured, which given his track record is certainly possible, I just don't see where they're going to put him if he's that good. I mean, obviously the practice squad is an option for a kid like that, but like, whereas if he's at center, and he finds himself being the third guy behind Posick and Whippler, then maybe there's a little more movement. And if he has the ability to do center and guard, then he's a little more intriguing. But of the offensive line guys, he's the one that sort of jumps out at you as somebody who actually could be serious. Again, and that's not because D'Artagnan is bad and his name is awesome. I just don't know enough about him and his athletic. When it comes to offensive linemen, with every other position, I can always look at production metrics and all that. We still don't have that for offensive line. So you're going entirely off physical characteristics, and the TCU lineman is very athletic, and that's sort of where I default to him having an advantage, in addition to the fact that he's got a really strong track record at TCU.
Is it Justin Osborne from SMU?
Oh, SMU. Yes, him.
Yeah.
He's really intriguing. Again, part of the reason I didn't look at him all that much is just I don't know where they're going to put him. The Browns are pretty full up at offensive line. I thought if they were going to add anything, it would have been tackle in the draft. They've got seemingly 4 guards who are locked to make the roster. So again, if he can contribute at center, I think he gets a whole lot more interesting.
Yeah, 6'3", 307, 56 starts.
Yeah, he's played a ton of football.
Yeah, that's good. Tight end Eli Wilson is the last one I have here. I do have a tryout from an edge rusher, John Pius from Wisconsin. And then tight end Eli Wilson from App State, 6'2", 239, 50 games for the Mountaineers. Had 78 catches, 779 yards, and 12 touchdowns.
So I have 2 guys from App State that are reportedly signed. There's the tight end who's profiles as an F, and we'll see what he can do. It's not all that different from the kid they got out of Wyoming last year, although I thought Trayton Welch was better than this kid. But I think the tape, there's some intriguing tape of this one. But they also reportedly signed a running back from App State. And
I skipped over him. Yeah.
I am very curious to see what he can do, because he didn't do anything in college. Like at any
Amani
point.
Marshall.
Yeah. His best year production is 700 yards. It's eerily like last year when they signed Aiden Robbins out of BYU, and he had played at a couple different schools, and he had one decent year at one place and then transferred to another and then promptly did nothing again. So look, when we went into the draft process, and nothing had been resolved with Nick Chubb at that point, my attitude was draft 2 guys. They did that and sign an undrafted rookie. See what the undrafted rookie can do. I suspect the undrafted rookie was slim pickings, given the fact that most undrafted free agents probably looked at the running back room and said, no shot.
Yeah, no, thank you.
But, it gives you a guy you can look at. And if he's interesting, great. If not, then I think they can probably, we'll see if Nick Chubb remains an option or not. But it's not going to be the end of the world if you have to cut him. Maybe they like him in the, as an option for the dynamic kickoff. I don't know. But there's just not much there to sit there and go, I get why they brought this guy in.
For you, is there still some hope of bringing Nick Chubb back?
Sure, why not? I mean, I given what I am anticipating will be a whole lot of handoffs this year. I don't see any reason you couldn't use 4 running backs, but we'll see. I mean, one, the move to sign the kid from App State, they're at least going to want to look at him, at least a rookie camp and potentially a little longer, and that allows Nick Chubb to continue to get healthier. But in the meantime, if he signs a contract elsewhere, then it is what it is. I don't suspect the Browns are going to move off the qualifying offer, which is $1.5 million against their cap, $3 million to Chubb. And if he can get more than that, I mean, at some point he has to decide if he wants to take it. I don't fault him whatsoever.
Yeah, Ken Carman this morning hinting that he is flirting with a team in the AFC or NFC North.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, so be it. I mean, I know I've seen all these workout videos, and I hope he's going to come back and be Nick Chubb again, but none of them are doing the thing that everybody wants to see him do, which is run and cut.
Yep, absolutely. What else? Okay, so I saw in the chat while we were talking there, Pete, there was some questions about the Elijah Moore thing. So it is a unrestricted free agent tender. Basically, any other team can sign him until July 22nd. At that point, for more money than $3.42 million. So another team has to beat that figure. And then the Browns could potentially get some compensation in return. I don't think anybody will beat that figure, to be honest. So I think he ends up back with the Browns, which I think is a good thing for this wide receiver room. Yeah,
I mean, I've been happy with the idea of bringing Elijah Moore back the entire way. If the worst thing you can say about Elijah Moore is he's going to give you 600 yards, okay, sign me up.
Yep.
Given the fact they signed Deontay Johnson, which seems desperate, and ultimately, we'll see where that goes. I'd rather have Elijah Moore, and if they can get something out of Deontay Johnson and have Elijah Moore, great. I don't think that's likely. So Elijah Moore, was happy to catch passes from Joe Flacco in the past. We'll see where that ends up, but there hasn't been a huge market for him to this point. I don't know that one's going to manifest. And again, you get somebody who knows what the Browns want. He may have a better year, given the fact that the Browns should be more balanced, should be able to do things more effectively off play action, should be able to have a better passing game overall. And hopefully he can, take another step in his development and stop spazzing out the second he catches the football.
Deontay Johnson, as you kind of already lent us to give us your feelings on that a little bit, but can you expand on those thoughts a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, Deontay Johnson was essentially kicked off of 3 teams last year. They were basically tired of his shit.
Yeah.
So look, on the one hand, we'll see what the actual money is. It's probably low enough that if there's an issue, the Browns can cut him and forget about it. And on some level, you can say that Deontay Johnson has to be on his best behavior if he wants to continue having an NFL career.
Any career, yeah.
Otherwise, he can potentially go play in the UFL. On the other hand, if the money's not enough for him, he may be perfectly happy to, or content to at some point just say, "Screw off, I'm done," and make sure that he's going to not be on the team. He has ability. There's no question of that. He can produce. Has been an effective football player. It's just can he keep the crazy down and just be a functional member of the team? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not holding my breath. He makes it to training camp, and then from that point, we'll see where we go.
Which brings me to the last question before we get into some videos. With Elijah Moore potentially coming back, Deontay Johnson here, I don't really count on him for anything. Obviously, you really can't. Where are you at with this wide receiver room? It was not addressed in the draft at all, which I know we both were hoping for at least somebody, right? And then despite the class still looking good, that's one of the areas they did not address, and then they only have one UDFA in here. Trade? Question mark.
I mean, we'll see if there's anything that's out there that makes sense for anybody. I don't know that anyone is eager to trade a wide receiver that's going to make a meaningful difference for the Browns. I mean, ultimately, they don't have enough yet. Jerry Jeudy is a good player. Hopefully, he continues to be a good player. That gives them one good wide receiver that you can sort of say we can pencil him in to have a good year. Cedric Tillman certainly has ability, but it's 3 games. I mean, I think he will be good. It's just, what does that mean? Does that mean he's going to be over 1,000 yards? I don't know that you can bet on that. But is he going to be a worthwhile wide receiver? Great. After that, I mean, again, if Elijah Moore's back and you can sort of pencil him for 600 yards, great. But then you are, and this was always going to be the case on some level, you are counting on tight end to, get you over the hump in some respects. And if David Njoku is healthy, he's certainly capable of doing that. We'll see what Harold Fannin can do, but I can't sit here and go, oh, this 3rd round rookie who's 20 years old is going to come in and like make the offense go. I'm hopeful they can find ways for him to contribute, but I still think we're going to end up sitting here going, heading into both this season and then the next offseason going, we still need more wide receiver help. I think that's virtually guaranteed. Maybe there's a rabbit they can pull out of the hat in a Jerry Jeudy like fashion, or Amari Cooper or something like that. I just don't see it from here, but that's sort of where I look at this draft coming out of it. And even though I think the Browns did well in some respects, I did come out thinking they're not as like close to competing as I would have hoped. And I think maybe that was going to be inevitable anyway, but because, even if they drafted a bunch, used all their picks, for example, if they made 10 selections and they did some sort of some of the things maybe we were hoping they would do, that hope might have been false. But the fact that they didn't do it at all sort of paints a bleaker picture, at least at that position.
Yeah, I keep bringing up Alec Pierce just because he'll be going into his last year of his contract. They have Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and they drafted Adonai Mitchell last year. You would think maybe they would explore getting rid of him if they don't want to pay him long term. I saw him mentioned in an article, and a couple other guys, obviously, but that was the name that stuck out to me the most. Green Bay has a embarrassment of riches at the position. So maybe he kicks the tires on a couple of those situations, maybe.
Yeah. So a lot of it's going to depend on if the kid from Texas can do anything, because he did nothing for them last year. Projected first-round pick, who went in the 3rd round, but he didn't do anything. If he suddenly has a really great camp, maybe there's a world where Alex Pierce becomes expendable if the Colts don't want to keep him. They obviously drafted Tyler Warren to try to continue to build that offense. They've got a lot of weapons there in that offense for, the combination of Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. But Alex Pierce may be a situation where he is a trade near the trade deadline, where if the Colts season's not going how they would hope, which seems likely, that potentially then they're sitting there going, well, we don't really want to keep him. So now we're going to move him and try to maximize the return for a team that maybe thinks they're a wide receiver away. I like the fit for Alec Pierce because he's a guy who can go, play outside, go down the field. It fits. It checks a lot of the boxes that I think the Browns would want. But to this point, I don't see a compelling reason for the Colts to move him other than they just decide they don't like him. The Packers, on the other hand, they got, if there's such a thing as too many wide receivers, they're damn near it. They had 4 guys who could contribute last year, and then they drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, and then they came back and picked. And granted, he's sort of a weapon as opposed to a true wide receiver, but they still picked Savion Williams. So it suggests that they are going to they have an opportunity to move somebody. What does that look like? Are they going to get rid of Dontavian Wicks, who is a talented wide receiver who's had some drops? Are they going to move, Romeo Dobbs, who I think the Browns would be at least interested in? Again, somebody who theoretically supposed to be a downfield threat, but at what cost, and is there much competition? I think Green Bay is a far likelier option. It's just a question if the price matches, because I don't think the Browns are. I think Andrew Berry's proven that if the price is right, he's happy to pay it, or if he feels good about it. But I don't think he's interested in just sort of shipping off assets for sort of a guy that he doesn't think is going to be an impactful player. And it's weird because, by virtue of the fact that they've gotten Jerry Jeudy for pennies on the dollar, they've gotten Amari Cooper for pennies on the dollar. If you suddenly were to give a 3rd round pick for a guy who's is he good? Then it's weird because suddenly Andrew Berry looks bad because of Andrew Berry making those trades in the past. So it's just a very weird situation.
Yeah, it is. Jeffrey pointing out that Keenan Allen is still a free agent.
Yeah, well, Keenan Allen, who I loved coming out of Cal and has had a great career, is sort of, I just don't know what's left. And I don't see any upside for Keenan Allen to sign in Cleveland either.
Right.
If he's going to go somewhere, I assume he's going to go somewhere where he thinks he has a chance to win, chance to help a team. I could easily see him go to a place like the Rams or something like that if they need receiver help. I just don't expect he's going to make the trip to Cleveland.
Sure. Makes sense. You're watching The React. That's Pete Smith. My name is Brad Ward. Make sure you hit like and subscribe down below and the notification bell so you know every time one of our shows goes live 5 nights a week. We got you covered here at the OBR Streaming Network and at the OBR.com. Make sure you go read Pete's article today on the draft and the positives and negatives of what was a wild roller coaster ride. We're going to get into some of it right now. Let's take a look at the 33rd team's reaction as far as the best teams, in their opinion, in the draft. The best draft grades for the guys at the 33rd team, guys formerly from PFF, video courtesy of the 33rd team.
Nobody's going to force me to write a listicle. It's not going to happen.
That's right. No listicles here.
All right. New England Patriots. I thought the Patriots absolutely killed it in this draft. There were a couple of things like minor quibbles here or there, but overall they kept grabbing players that I loved. I thought this was a great draft. I think the Cleveland Browns had a fantastic draft. People hate this, right? Because it's weird. It's not a normal draft. But I think if you step back for a second, divorce yourself from the Shedeur Sanders drama, and just look at the players they acquired from the starting point that they were in and say, this is what the Browns are going to end up getting in addition to a first-round draft pick next year. I think the Browns had a spectacular draft. The Kansas City Chiefs, same thing. They just kept getting players that I thought were incredible value all the way through the draft, which always somehow seems more impressive when you're drafting at the bottom of each round. And, you look up and, oh, wow, look at this amazing player they got at the bottom of this round. The Raiders, I love the Raiders draft. The Genty pick is interesting because, it's right at the top of the range of how much value you want to put into a running back and all those kinds of things. But overall, I thought they did a spectacular job of mixing really good, surefire things and perfect calculated risks. Love that draft. And then the Seahawks. I love some of the picks they picked. They, again, combination. They didn't overthink things. They grabbed players that fit areas of need. and they roll the dice with a high upside quarterback in Jalen Milroe, who I think is a fantastic character guy in addition to having the talent that he could turn into a quarterback in the future.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any on that list. Raiders could be like the biggest wild card. I know our friend Arif said they're the most fun. I mean, when you talk about Jack Bash and Dante Thornton as weapons, Ashton Genty as a weapon, JJ Pegues is a defensive tackle who's a 320-pound direct snap and fullback type of player for Ole Miss. There's a lot to like about the Raiders. Darian Porter at corner, just fun players there. I like that list. I'll go through my top 5. There's some crossover. We could talk about some of these teams a little bit more in depth. But I started with the Browns. Here's the challenge in all of this, right? Usually when the draft grades come out for everybody, usually the teams that draft 8 or 10 times, more than your 7 are going to get the highest grades. But and we don't always do this the right way based off like, what did you start with? The Vikings started with 4 picks. Did they maximize what they started the weekend with? Or do you factor in, we always play this game, do you factor in the moves that led to losing the picks? But again, if you came into the weekend and you said where the Browns are as an organization that needs a reset and needs future just resources, I think they did that. And then again, from a process perspective, you say, hey, they've got no quarterback, and they come away with Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. And look, we're higher on Gabriel than a lot of other people are. Fine, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 100% on your QB evaluations and you don't like a guy, don't take him. Don't waste it. But until you're 100%, take some shots at quarterback to try to solve your problem. So they have 2 young QBs to compete. They traded down, got Mason Graham. They picked up an extra first rounder, added a lot of talent to the team. A lot of good football players. 2 good running backs. Carson Swissinger, I love it. Linebacker, Harold Fannins. I cannot disagree with what the Browns have done as a whole. I thought the Baltimore Ravens did a really nice job.
So there's we've seen this a lot, Pete. A lot of people giving the Browns high grades on their draft around the country. National pundits liked what they did. What did you think of what they had to say about the Browns draft?
So they drove me nuts the entire draft process because they kept with the Shedeur 2 notion because that argument, but just applied at the second overall pick. But I agree with them 100% on what they're saying here. Like the thing everybody's been talking about for 4 months is the Browns don't have a quarterback. Okay, so throughout this process, including Kenny Pickett, they've used 2 fifth-round picks and a third-round pick to get 3 shots at this. Even if all those guys are a 10% shot each, okay, you've gotten 3 shots at this. And so and I'm working on the base assumption the Browns are going to be drafting a quarterback next year. Until something happens to change that, that's where I'm at. But, and that would be, at that point, that is their 4th attempt. That's exactly how it should go. That should not be number 1.
Yeah.
We even talked through the process. I would have been thrilled with Jalen Milroe and all these other things. That would have at least given them one more shot to look at this thing. So now they're taking a total of 4. That's exactly what should happen. Because if they get lucky with any of these guys, suddenly they go into next year's draft and they have, 2 picks and they can do whatever they want. Now, even if they don't, even if they think, we're not sure about any of these guys, at least they don't go into next year's draft being forced to do anything. Like, let's say the Browns go, 6 and 11, 7 and 10, 8 and 9, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the Jags are, their 18th pick or something like that, 19th pick.
Similar. Yeah.
And we're sitting here going, man, the Browns got boxed out from the premier quarterback or whatever, and the guy they really want. They can at least look into what it would cost to make that move. And if they don't like it, they can say, okay, we're just not going to go that route and we're going to do this other thing because we've got these other guys here. If you don't do that, if you don't have these other options in your roster, now you feel like you're almost forced into that situation, which is what we saw when we got to Deshaun Watson. They gave themselves no outs with the Deshaun Watson situation, and they put themselves in the position where they had to overpay and overpromise and everything else. At least this way, they can sort of within reason, they're going to have to overpay because that's just the nature of the beast if they want to move up and go get a quarterback. But it gives them the ability to sort of look at this and go, okay, we're willing to pay this much, but we're not willing to pay that much. Where we're talking about no first round picks for, the next 3 years again, or whatever it is. That's important to me. So the other part about this is like, we all said, I know I said, I want Kevin Stefanski to pick his quarterback. And then the moment he did it, everybody was pissed. So now he's got his own guy, theoretically 2 of them. And now he gets to do it. Let's let him coach him up. And presumably he also said, I like Kenny Pickett enough that I want him on my team. Great. So now Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Rees and Bill Musgrave get to coach up 3 guys, and they get to compete. They get to do all these things, and we're going to see what happens. And the best case scenario is we're going to get to a point where the Browns have to cut Joe Flacco. That's the best case scenario, because if they get to a point where they have to cut Joe Flacco because they feel so good about these 3 guys, then great. That means you got 3 guys in their 20s where you feel good about it. Do I think that's a likely scenario? Not really, but at least it's a scenario as opposed to going into the season with a 40-year-old quarterback. So I like that part of it. Whatever you feel about Dylan Gabriel, I wouldn't have done it. That's not who I would have picked. Not my taste, not these other things. But again, I want Kevin Stefanski to pick his own guy. So let's see what see what he gets out of it. Does he see a left-handed Case Keenum? Maybe. I hope it's not another Kellen Moore, but at least you're going to give yourself as many swings at this as you can. You're going to employ a process that makes sense for this whole thing, and you're not married to anybody. So you're not tethered to one particular option. The guy who's most likely to make the roster right now is Dylan Gabriel. So that gives you complete freedom with how you want to handle this situation. And while that's not satisfying from the standpoint of going into the season, knowing who your quarterback is and being like, some of these other teams where if you're the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen is your dude. Okay. Nobody thinks Joe Flacco is an answer. Like, even if he has a fun season, nobody's going, well, it's time to re-sign Joe Flacco for a 4-year, $150 million contract. Like, that's not a thing. So at least in this situation, you get to play this, you get to operate in a world of reality, and you're just sort of seeing what can happen.
So there is like this faction of people out there, including the guys we just watched from 33rd Team, who are high on Dylan Gabriel. They like his arm strength. They think he's very accurate, and he does everything right? Like, he's very, not everything right, but he doesn't make a lot of the big mistake in a lot of situations. He seems to be fundamentally sound. So I think that although this wasn't planned, having a guy like that in front of Sanders kind of sets a nice precedent of like, hey, here's a guy who or at least believe will do everything right and try to be coachable and try to, do all these things correctly. And you have to pass him up. So he kind of sets a tone for the other rookie who may have in another situation come in, as we've heard, with an entitled attitude. So whether they planned, obviously they didn't plan this, but here's what you have is a scenario where it's at least it feels like it can work to their benefit that way.
So they took 2 quarterbacks and combined with Kenny Pickett, 3 quarterbacks who were 4-year starters in college. Kenny Pickett obviously also has the 2 years with the Steelers. They drafted 2 quarterbacks who might have the lowest turnover-worthy play percentage of any in college. Even if we can point to things that Shedeur Sanders doesn't do well relative to that in terms of taking bad sacks and these other things, he doesn't turn over the ball. And we heard Kevin Stefanski harp on this for the past 2 years of they don't want to turn over the football. So they drafted 2 quarterbacks that don't do that or do it at a very low rate. In fact, I think Dylan Gabriel had something like either his last 6 or 8 games, which included the playoffs, he had 1 pick. Like, that certainly seems like something that the Browns are following through on. And those trends are very interesting. We know they loved Cam Ward, 4-year starter. Are those trends is that a requirement for them to draft a quarterback? I don't know. I don't think that's going to be true at all because it's unrealistic. There are going to be some phenomenal quarterbacks who just come out earlier than that. But nevertheless, experience is super valuable. The Browns got guys who have played a ton of football. Dylan Gabriel started 63 freaking games. Shedeur Sanders is like 48. So you're going to lean into that and see if that pays dividends for you in terms of being able to get guys who can hit their peak quickly, show you something to give you an argument that they can be a real quarterback quickly. It doesn't mean they aren't going to continue to get better or that they can't still evolve as players, but that part of it, I think, is helpful for where the Browns find themselves. So, and to add in DTR, the only other quarterback they've drafted since Kevin Stefanski's been here, also played a ton of football. So that seems to be something they really like. And I'll be curious to see how much of a factor that is going forward in their evaluation process. But that part of the draft, I liked what they did day 3 of the draft. I have quibbles with other things they did in the draft, but I am more than happy with day 3. And I'm more than happy with what that allowed them to set up with undrafted rookies.
World's Fastest kind of echoing my sentiment there as far as Gabriel will also study more, set the bar high, making sure that Shedeur works. Has he ever had to fight for playing time with a dude who had traits like Gabriel? This is not going to be easy for Sanders. It's new to him. So I think that is a valuable aspect of this, that he does come in maybe somewhat humbled.
I don't care. I mean, that's the part of this which is so
you don't care.
It's so overplayed. No. I mean, like maybe it's true, but I don't care. He's now a 5th round pick. Come in and win a job, or don't. Like, I don't want to take away from that because I want Shedeur Sanders to grow as a person, but I'm not going to sit here and proclaim that this is changed him as a human being. He's got an opportunity to
we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. He's got an opportunity as a 5th round pick to prove that he had what I thought was a second round worth of prospect, what some people thought was a 1st round prospect. If he does that, awesome. Then the Browns are in great shape. And if he doesn't, okay, then he might end up on the practice squad or on another team. Like, I'm not worried about his emotional state. If he's a pain in the ass, they can cut him. If he's great, then the Browns are set, and they've got not only a guy who can play and win games, but an engaging personality that people can genuinely root for. And if he, in the same way that Baker Mayfield had that sort of oeuvre about him, you love him when he's on your team because he fights, he does all these things. And granted, especially when he's in college, he would stick the middle finger at everybody else. But when he was your guy, you loved that, especially when he's playing well. If Shedeur is good and plays well, people are going to love these sort of bravado and the swag he brings to the position. So I don't expect he's going to lose that part of him. Am I sitting here thinking, that maybe this will help him be refocused? Maybe. I'm more thinking that he's going to come in and sees Dylan Gabriel here, knows that Dylan Gabriel has a better shot to make the roster than he does, and is going to double down and work even harder or whatever. He's either going to work his ass off or he's going to pout. He can choose however he's going to do it. I suspect he's going to work his ass off because when you get past all of the stuff around him, and I've said my piece on this, where I thought adults around him did more damage to him than anyone else did. Even if you include whatever he did during his own draft process to sort of sabotage himself, there were things that I always found true about him. He's a grinder. He's an overachiever. And if those things come to Cleveland, then he's got a shot. So that's all I can ask for it. And again, if you get that from the 5th round, if the Browns took him at 33, no one would have thought twice about it. But like, there's this element where everybody's sort of, and this is a natural reaction when the NFL tells you, even if your preconceived notion was he was worth the second pick of the draft, that he goes in round 5, your immediate reaction is, oh man, maybe he's not good. Maybe he's fifth round talent. I still believe it's second round tape. I just think he had a terrible approach to the draft process.
That's exactly what I was saying. That's exactly what I was saying about him coming in with a different. That's all.
So I don't know. And when I say terrible draft process, to this part, I mean advice he got. He should have participated in the
I just mean him coming in knowing that he has to beat out somebody else.
I mean that part's absolutely true. I'd be very curious to see if we were to do this over again, and Shedeur Sanders participated in the Shrine Game, did the combine, did all those things, and had an agent, if he would have done better. I suspect he would have done at least a little bit better. But again, he's got a great opportunity to win a job. And if he does that, like it'll be awesome for him. And then he can, I'm more than happy to let him go and do whatever he wants in terms of, his celebrations or anything else. By all means, enjoy it.
Just want him to be challenged. That's all. And then we can go on to our next video here. This is just more reaction to the Browns draft. This is McShay and Mensch talking. Let's see how this video comes up here.
It's like an A- draft. Now I don't give out grades, but I'll let you know, like this one would be up there with some of the best because they move back and get a defensive tackle in Mason Graham that most teams, not all, but most teams viewed as a top 5, top 7 player. Some teams saw him at like 3 or 4, and they move back and they get the first round next year.
Let's talk about how they hit, I think, a home run on every player that wasn't a quarterback. Carson Swissinger from UCLA, the linebacker, first pick in the second round. I love that pick. Very productive guy, only 1-year starter at UCLA, former walk-on, was a special teams ace, and then just blew up last year. The 2 backs they get, Quinshawn Judkins, exactly what they need, that powerful downhill runner.
Yep.
And then they got Dylan Sampson in the 4th round.
Yeah, so I know.
The 2 backs, home runs. Then they get Harold Fannin Jr., the Yak King. With Njoku, like you can have more than one great tight end.
These 2 quarterbacks, they landed in the best spot that they could possibly land. There's zero pressure, and even though it's Shedeur, there's zero pressure that these guys have to play. Ever. And we got a first next year.
I understand.
We got a first next year in case neither of these 2 wind up being the guy.
I just don't know how you're managing this position. I just don't get it.
So here's the thing. How many reps does anyone think Joe Flacco needs? Very few.
Yeah.
And not only that, my biggest concern with Joe Flacco as a full starter, if that was ever going to be the case, was his arm falling off in July because he's got to throw every day. That allows him to save himself for if they need him to actually play games. I mean, it was his arm. Everybody was when he was the Denver Bronco, people were talking about his arm like falling off.
Yeah.
The Jets, his arm was okay. And all of a sudden, when he came back from Cleveland off the couch and all this other stuff, everybody's like, oh, wait a minute. He's throwing a little bit. He's got a little more juice. Now, he may have been training and doing – I know he credits pickleball, or at least I will, for his rejuvenation. But nevertheless, I think a lot of this is just the fact he wasn't throwing the entire year of football. So, great. You don't need him to take a lot of reps. So you get to use Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders and throw as many reps as you want them at them. Granted, there's going to come a point, and it's not going to be very long into this thing, where you've got to start narrowing down that field pretty quick. Still – I guess it depends on how you view the season. If you are somebody who sort of looks at this as almost like a lottery ticket, like a scratch off, where the Browns are going to run the ball better, they're going to play really good defense, and do all these things, which again I wanted them to do. This was my whole thing in the offseason. They are, in as much as the draft did not go anywhere to how I thought it was going to go in a lot of ways. They did the things I wanted them to do.
Yeah.
They're going to run the ball better, and they're going to play good defense.
Yeah.
if you then view this quarterback position almost like a freebie, like a scratch off, and you're just like, screw it, I don't care. We just want to see what these QBs can do. Like I said before, it gives you this weird freedom about it. If you are, and ultimately, I think they are going to try to, win football games and do those things and try to get better. At some point, it's going to sort of constrict naturally. I'm very curious to see how they manage it, because there are real challenges to that with the CBA and the way practice reps are dealt with. They are going to ask these guys to do a lot of work on their own to try to make up for that difference. And again, so I'm very curious to see how that works. But that part of it, I'm fine with. Again, I am working under the preconceived notion quarterback next year. Anything that happens other than that, great, surprise, love it. The rest of the draft, again, first day home run. They absolutely crushed it. And as I get prepared to do the comprehensive draft reviews I've done, Mason Graham's basically about done. I like him more now than I did before they picked him. I understand why the Browns love him. When you narrow down what he does when he attacks, when he's set loose, as opposed to being a read and react defensive tackle, he's just an absolute bear.
He is. Can I ask you a question about that? Because I've been kind of digging into him too. And it's like, okay, so we know he's kind of short and stubby, right? And
it shows up.
It does show up. But he is kind of like a master of leverage at times. And he wins with that swim move a lot. I've been watching, and he went like when he gets after the passer, he wins with a swim move, and sometimes he just beats guys. But he does get off of blocks well at times. He never quits on a play. I've seen him come off of double teams a couple times, you know what I mean, to make a play, which is awesome. But like I saw his bench press was like super low for like strength, and like where does the strength come? Is it all lower body, you think? Like, because he looks so much stronger than what like his metrics would tell you.
Are you saying bench press in terms of number of reps?
Yes.
Yeah. It's really tough. The funny thing is, I've talked to Charles Bentley about this thing. He hates that thing because
as an indicator.
He doesn't think it measures shit.
Okay.
He thinks it's a complete waste of time. So I don't know how much you want to put into that, other than guys who are typically do really well in that thing are guys who are just gym rats and everything else. But there are any number of these guys who have had put up ridiculous bench presses, and we're not worth a shit in the league. His functional power is outstanding, and some of that comes from the fact that he syncs up his feet and hands really, really well. His bull rush is outstanding. This is part of what I think the Browns really, really like about him, is because when he just goes, if he can collapse a guard or a center into the quarterback's lap, it's going to take away the ability for him to step in the pocket and potentially push him right back into Myles Garrett's path. To your point, he is a very good tackler. His missed tackle percentage is super low, like 7.4% for his career. He is nimble enough to get off blocks to make plays. He's flashed a spin move that never really works, but just sort of shows off that he's an athlete, or a better athlete than maybe you suspect. But and ultimately he's not gonna be the guy they want on the field on 3rd and 12. They've got dudes for that. They've got Mike Hall. They've got Malik Collins. That's who they want out there for that situation. But when you're sitting there going, it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 5, and the other team's going to pass, Mason Graham can absolutely help you rush the passer in those situations, given what he does. And it will be very interesting to see how much stronger he can get because he's only 21. He's 90. Mike Hall was preposterously young last year, 99th percentile in age.
Yeah.
Mason Graham is 94th.
Yeah.
94th percentile in age for a kid who's that accomplished at the position. So, there's a belief that, there's every reason to believe he's going to continue to get bigger and stronger, but he does so many things well in terms of his balance, his ability to absorb contact, the way he displaces his weight. So he's virtually never on the ground. And the few times he is on the ground, he's immediately springs back up. But like I went in And I've said all along, good player. Run stopping.
Yep. Pete froze? Oh, you there?
Yep.
Oh, you froze up there for a minute. What were you saying? We finished that?
Oh, I think initially when I went in, I thought he was going to be an outstanding run defender. And ultimately, I still think that's his primary role. He's going to be a very, very good run player. And I don't think he's ever going to be a dynamic pass rusher. It would not surprise me if he never goes to the Pro Bowl or gets all pro, but is that good. And it's just because of the nature of how those things are voted on, that he may never put up the raw statistics necessary because he's surrounded by guys who are going to rack up those numbers because, in no small part, because of what he's able to do to help them out, to create pressure, to do those things. And he's more likely to get cleanup sacks, even though every so often he's going to beat a guy clean who's set for power and just fly right by them, or launch an offensive lineman right into the quarterback's lap. But man, I went in thinking he was a really good player, and then when I isolated just the plays where you let him loose, I completely understand why the Browns were like, we absolutely love this kid.
Yeah, Mensch talked about Swissinger there too, and how much he liked him. Same thing, where I had watched him, but not a ton. It's the thing that scared me initially was just 1 year of production, really, kind of, right? Or being that guy. But after kind of digging into it some more, he appears to be an incredibly smart football player, at least for me. Along with being athletic, his IQ helps him a ton. And as you kind of mentioned in your article, like, even though it's not probably the way that we would have liked to go as far as linebacker, it does help what we wanted to help, and that's stopping the run and the defense being better.
Yeah, so Carson Swissinger, his production is otherworldly. His 100th percentile in solo tackles. He basically got 20% of his team solo tackles. So every 5 solo tackles is Carson Swissinger on a team where 3 linebackers got drafted and another one was at linebacker and got moved to edge rusher and was also drafted. He got 1 out of every 5 tackles. He is clicking when he wants to click and go. He can fly and knife into the backfield. Yeah. He does a lot of the JOK things that you see that you would like him to do. The difference is he's 240, and I think part of it. And I know draft nicks who obviously caught up to this, and because I don't watch linebackers because I don't care. You're a useless position, and I say that jokingly. You're a useless position. I want you to pick you on day 3, not day 1 or 2. But his listed weight, I don't think has been updated for like 3 years. So he was listed at 6'2", 225. He's at Pro Day was 238 and is very athletic for 238 pounds. So when he clicks and goes, it's fast and he's a big man doing it. He is terrifying as a blitzer. He can time it up from depth and knife his way into the backfield and be on the quarterback before they even know what's coming. He can absolutely contribute in coverage. He's just so big. He takes up space that it allows him to be in on more things than other players. And then his willingness to pursue is good. One of the things I, sort of grumble to myself watching him is I know part of the reason they drafted him is because Jim Schwartz is like, yes, I finally have my linebacker that we can run inverse 2 and he's going to get back there and it's going to drive me insane doing it. But at least he can run and get there. He covers a ton of ground. The issue with Carson Swissinger is that he is not good when it comes to dealing with blocks and taking on contact. Part of that is because he's such a big target. It's very easy for linemen to get to him, but he doesn't have a lot of answers for it. So you're sitting there going, well, if he's kept clean, he's going to fly around and he's going to make a ton of plays, whether he's inside or outside. Well, he goes to a team that has Myles Garrett, Isaiah McGuire, Mason Graham, Malik Collins, Shelby Harris, Mike Hall, Juwan Briggs, they're going to keep that group up, the offensive line busy, and should allow Carson Swissinger to just absolutely fly around and vulture people down constantly. And if he's doing that, if he's able to jump off the snap and fly into the backfield and make plays behind the line of scrimmage, he's going to be a really, really quick fan favorite, just the way he's able to make plays. Again, another really good tackler, even though some of the time it is ugly as hell. He gets guys on the ground. And then he was able to contribute enough as a pass defender in something that the Browns have been missing in that spot. He is big enough, again, and this is where taking up space is an advantage for him. He's a pain in the ass as an underneath defender. If the quarterback's not paying attention, he can easily come up and make an interception and pay it off. So there are people who do not like Carson Swissinger for all the reasons I brought up as negatives, and that's fine. When you are the Browns and you sit there and say, this is what he does well, you're putting him in a position where it's going to allow him to do those things well consistently, because they have such a good group up front that's going to keep him clean and allow him to make just all kinds of plays. And granted, you want him to get better at being able to deal with blocks and those type of things. Jason Tarver is a very good linebacker coach. But if nothing else, that front is going to allow him to thrive. And there's nothing to stop him from reaching all pro. It's very difficult to do that, obviously, but just in terms of the things he was able to achieve in college, even though it's a one-year start, he only started 10 games. Yeah, he was that productive and he's that athletic that it allows him to be an achievable goal for him. Do I think that's terribly likely? Not really, but I do think because I think ultimately it's going to be one of those things where there are always going to be people who are going to be, well, the scheme is what's helping him out. And okay, that's a problem I can live with. The scheme, if he's so good because of the scheme, great. They put him in the perfect situation with guys that are making him better and he crushes it. That's the dream scenario, and it makes it a great pick.
I think that I was just impressed. Like, you can see that at times, and you're right about him getting off of blocks, but there are times that he just completely avoids that situation altogether by just identifying, a run scheme or where a guard's going to try to get him, and he can kind of just evade that, similar to JOK. Not like JOK, because that's only he can do those kind of special things, but similar to that. He's able to kind of avoid the blockers at times and make his way through the mess to get to the tackler. So, and he certainly can.
I think he's able to beat them to the spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
He gets there before they get there, and it just allows him a place. And what's interesting is it reminds me of Phillips, who when they drafted him at LSU, he had that ability. Unfortunately, he had 4 season-ending injuries in a row, but he was another guy who he wasn't overly big or overly, didn't overly test like elite, but his trigger was so quick on read and react that he could beat guys before the linemen ever had a chance. Now that's going to be more difficult in the NFL. Obviously the linemen are better, but if he can do those things, he's going to blow up a share plays, potentially cause sacks. And whether he's inside or outside, he's a guy who can chase down the quarterback. Does he get chased down Lamar Jackson in a foot race? Probably not, but there are any number of quarterbacks he's going to be able to hawk down.
All right. I did want to get to this real quick. This is Colin Cowherd on the Browns trade down. Not a guy I usually go to, but.
NFL Draft Review episode is presented by BMW, where electrifying performance and
the way Michigan's played the last.
Cleveland. They're trying to get out from this tonnage of Deshaun Watson's contract, and the way to do it is get a star quarterback. I mean, that's how the Broncos got out from the tonnage of Russell Wilson. They got Bo Nix, who will be free for 4 years.
Yeah.
So, I didn't like it at all. I just think, we could always take shots at Cleveland, but I've always been a Stefanski fan, and I have people that really like Andrew Berry. I think this is a really easy deal to make. And then, by the way, you slide down to 5. Now, a lot of people think Mason Graham is more in the 8 to 12 range as a draft pick because his ceiling's low. And I think in most years, that would be fair. One of the people that loved what Cleveland didn't love Mason Graham as a number 5 pick. He said he's closer to 10 than he is to 5. But again, he's going to start. In that division, it's a northern division. It's a rugged division. Did you like what Cleveland did at 5 with Graham after making a pretty shrewd move to get all those picks?
Yeah, to me, the note that I wrote down, I mean, Travis Hunter for Cleveland doesn't do that much, right? I mean, they're several players away, and their quarterback situation is a disaster. When you think Mason Graham and you watch the way Michigan's played the last couple of years, obviously in that area too, ideal for the AFC North. Like that'd be my thing. Like that guy is just made to play in cold weather against Pittsburgh, against Baltimore, teams that want to play physical, slow down the game. So listen, this is draft. I mean, McMillan went 8, Kelvin Banks went 9. I mean, this wasn't exactly Tony Baselli, and Myles Garrett coming off the board here right in this range. So I have no problem with going Mason Graham. To me, they could have taken me and you, Colin. The moment they made that trade, Cleveland won the draft. They get next year's. To me, the likelihood of Jacksonville, first-time head coach, young coaching staff, I mean, they could easily be a 5-6 win team. We do not know if their quarterback is good, and he has struggled to stay healthy. And I get Liam Cohen had a big year with Baker Mayfield, but he didn't resurrect. Baker Mayfield was good the previous year, too. That's how Dave Canales got a job. So it's not like he just made Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's now had 2 good years in a row. So I think the Cleveland, again, could have taken anybody the moment they got the future one and the second. Think how often we see good players get drafted in the 30s. Happens every year regardless how good the draft is. Because the same type player is there in the mid-30s. It can be impact starters that you get for like $1.5 million a year.
Yeah, and that's what, to your point, is Cleveland gets Jacksonville's first-round pick next year. What's crazy about that is that could be a top 6 pick. I mean, that is nuts. Hold on.
We've seen it happen a couple years in a row where the Lions benefited the one year when they had the Stafford trade, and the Rams had that awful year, and McVay thought about quitting football to go work at Amazon. They got they got the 6th pick that they turned into Laporta and Gibbs. We saw it the year when Denver was awful and Seattle got a really high pick and took Witherspoon. We have seen these future ones it's usually a player trade, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, whatever. But sometimes on a draft day trade, remember Chicago traded from 20 to 11 with the Giants, and then they were terrible the next year, and the Giants got multiple picks in the top 10. Now, you still got to make the right pick with that selection, but the amount of flexibility, if let's assume Cleveland isn't going to be that good. I mean, their quarterback situation is a disaster. If I tell you next year they have pick 5 and 9. Like you got a lot to work with.
That's why they made the move. So, by the way, DraftKings, all odds provided by DraftKings. If we mention them during this our podcast, DraftKings had Ashton Genty plus 650 to get drafted number 6 and plus 475 to get drafted by the Raiders. This was a real obvious one to me, and I had mentioned this multiple times.
All right. So the main reason I wanted to show that there is they were just kind of talking about Jacksonville in this trade, and that I may have cut it off there, but basically what he was saying before that was, Jacksonville, new coach, new GM, new everything. They haven't even been in camp yet. Does he even know enough about his team to make a trade like this? Do you know what I mean?
I love the scenario where they're bad. I mean, I'm all for it. Let's go with that. We'll see. I mean, obviously it's a huge year for Trevor Lawrence. There's no excuses at this point with Brian Thomas Jr., with now Travis Hunter, the weapons they have. But hey, they play a tough schedule. So listen, nothing would make me happier than Jacksonville not winning a game this year. Let's go for that. So I'm sort of more prepared for them to at least be decent, which is fine. I mean, if you get another top 10 pick out of this, it just absolutely reinforces how great of a trade it was. So I'm hoping for it.
Yeah. It's interesting though that, I mean, if you've seen any of the press conferences with their new GM, he looks like he's about 16 years old. and it's pretty wild. But yeah, this super aggressive, and it puts the Browns in a really good situation. I mean, there's really no way you could have turned down that trade in any scenario, right?
So, we talked about before the draft, they had to get the Godfather offer that you could not refuse. They got it, so they took it. I mean, I mean, there are people who are disappointed, but nobody can sit there and say the Browns didn't get enough. You can say, the Browns turned down another opportunity to get a superstar, this, that, and the other. Okay, fine. You're not wrong in that sense, and it would have been fun to have the most interesting player in the NFL on the Browns. But there's nothing to argue they didn't get enough of the pick. You can argue with how they used the assets. If you don't like Mason Graham enough, or if you don't like Quidshot Judkins enough, okay, totally fair. We'll see how they do. But the return on that trade was enormous.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to another video here. Fire this one up.
The Browns starter week 1.
Yes, he's the most talented quarterback in that room. Look, I had him at the bottom of the first, top of the second. Ironically, I compared him to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins had a great career in Minnesota with offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski, now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Whatever happened in the draft to me is ancient history. Shedeur Sanders on Saturday night should have been calling the skill players of the Cleveland Browns saying, hey, here I come, and start developing a relationship. If I'm the Browns, I either keep Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett as my veteran guy. I took Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, who's a nice player, not a lot of upside, but I really need to know what I have in Shedeur Sanders, because next year I have 2 first-round picks. If I can win with Shedeur, I can get a massive haul for those picks, given all those other quarterbacks that are available. So if I'm Shedeur, whatever happened, lessons learned, and just move forward. And when you look at the skill players that they have, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, they added Harold Fannin, 2 good running backs, Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. You look at some of these other guys that have done well, be it Jaden Daniels last year, C.J. Stroud 2 years ago. I think Shedeur is set up for success in Cleveland.
I think you're wrong, Mike T. I think you're wrong, and I think somebody like you will understand and appreciate where I'm coming from when I say this. I don't think the day 1 starter or the week 1 starter for the NFL season for the Cleveland Browns, as it pertains to Shedeur Sanders specifically, is going to be determined by just his play. I think all the stuff that has been said, all the stuff that has been reported is erroneous as it may be in the eyes of a lot of people, including myself, as cruel as it might be in the eyes of people like myself in terms of what happened to him. I think that you had people looking to give him a reality check. And now I think what you're going to do is see people wanting to test his emotional and mental resolve as it pertains to that. As of yesterday afternoon, he was en route to Cleveland, from what I was told, in a pickup truck, ready to put on his lunch, grab his lunch pail, put on his hard hat, and get to work. That's what I was told in terms of yesterday about how he's looking at things right now, anxious to go out there and show out. But you're hearing people out of Cleveland talk, Dom, about how Dylan Gabriel was their preferred quarterback, Big Ten Player of the Year, that kind of thing. They were saying that they looked at him. I don't know how, because he wasn't Shedeur Sanders, but nevertheless, they were looking at it. You look at Flacco. He's a fan favorite. They loved him in Cleveland. They never wanted him to leave after the job he did for them a couple of years ago when Deshaun Watson went down, and he came in and did his thing, okay? And then you're looking at Kenny Pickett. Now, I know that Kenny Pickett is a former Steeler. Then he went to Philadelphia. He's got a Super Bowl championship as a backup. We get all of that part. But in his last 17 starts, his record is like 13-4. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, I think they look at Shedeur as a long-term solution. I'm not saying he's going to sit out the year or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the starter at some point this upcoming season, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to be judged by just his play. I think they're going to want to see.
All right, that's ridiculous, but he will be judged by just his play, in my opinion. The one thing I would have to say about this, Pete, is they do have to figure it out in 1 year. Like this, doesn't it feel like their timeline? So you got 2 rookies and you've got Pickett and whatever they think of Pickett. But you do have to figure it out to a certain degree in 1 year, because your opportunity is 1 year from now. So the timeline is naturally kind of crunched to figure out what you have here, right? Like he's saying it's their long-term solution. I mean, you have to figure that out in 1 year if he's your long-term solution. No?
I I don't think so, and it's for the reasons I stated before. My assumption is they're drafting a quarterback next year. So unless somebody gives them a compelling reason, blows them away,
point. Yeah.
Then they're going to do that. So I think maybe Shador might feel like he has a short timeline to do that, but I don't think the Browns do, because for the reason they unless they feel compelled to just roll out these young kids and see what they can do. And again, if they treat it like sort of a scratch off setup, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to be right by their veterans and try to win football games. So I don't think they're going to put him out there. If he wins the job, it's easy, and he would start week 1 if he's that good. But they're going to know in practice. Like, this is the thing, we go, well, I haven't seen him, or whatever. They're going to have a good sense whether he can play or not. He's one of these guys or both of these guys is going to face off against scout team all year long. What is going to be a very, very good defense. You're going to have all this training camp, all this other stuff, and you're going to find out if these guys can play enough to be interesting, and that's going to dictate what you're going to do in the draft. But I think the Browns are still going to be looking to take one of those quarterbacks, and then they have a setup where potentially, depending on how they go, because if Shador is good enough, then they may get rid of one of the other two. Either Flacco, again, if which is the dream scenario, if they feel really good about all three of those young guys, and then or they move on from Pickett or something, that then they can be in a situation where they have whoever they draft next year, Gabriel and Shador, all taking this swing to see if they can get these guys to work when all three guys are on cost-controlled rookie deals, and seeing if it works out. So I understand why people would feel that way by sitting there going, man, we want to see what we've got real quick so we can make an informed decision. I think that is going to be apparent. They're either going to be so good that you're going to have players sitting there around and going, woo, talking to the media, those type of things. You're going to have, sources and all that stuff talking about, woo, this kid's pretty good, all that stuff. Or they're just going to earn their way on the field and prove it. Short of that, again, we're going to be talking about drafting a quarterback next year, which I'm totally okay with.
That's kind of what I meant, is like, it would have to be a convincing. I mean, they would have to be rather thoroughly convinced that one of these kids in a year has given them enough to not take their assets next year and go get another quarterback with them, right? Like, it would have to be something unexpected and rather preposterous that they come along that quickly and you feel that strongly about their future to not take the asset you've gained and go get the next quarterback, or what you would expect be your franchise quarterback. And then the guy that you do that with is the guy you expect to kind of take this thing over at that point, right?
Most likely, yeah. I mean, especially if they're drafting as high as we're talking about, absolutely. But short of we're having conversations about rookie of the year, I just think we're more than likely talking about, who they're drafting next year. We're watching Lenore Sellers, we're watching Cade Klubnik, we're watching Drew Allar, and seeing how those guys shape up. We'll see. I mean, look, again, nothing would make me happier than, hey, insert quarterback is just one offensive rookie of the year, and the Browns have two first-round picks. They can go get one of what's going to be a really strong tackle class, and some of these other things they can address and just make their football team better. But I'm not holding my breath. So, I would say one of these guys, which I include Kenny Pickett in this, has to make me take notice and go, oh, maybe we shouldn't talk about taking word. Even then, that's going to be difficult, because it's going to be they're going to have to show enough where you're sitting there going, it's not just that they're pretty good, which then gives you options in terms of how you want to approach this thing. But is it a case of this guy's good enough where you're not talking about a Kirk Cousins type, which I understand where everybody would go, oh man, he made out Pro Bowls and all these other things. But are we talking about him as a guy who's going to take the team to the Super Bowl? Because ultimately that's all that's going to matter. So I love it, and then it frees you up to sort of play it how you want to play it. because if you don't like at that point, if you don't like the 26 quarterback draft, you can wait till 27. If like Sellers stays in school and Lagway is going to be ready, like that's going to be freaky. 27 is going to be an insane class of just players. But I'm working under the assumption that we're talking about quarterbacks all off season. So we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, I just find it. I think it would be difficult in a year to do enough to push anybody really off of the idea of not going to get your quarterback next year in a year's time. Usually I think it would take longer than that, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
that kind of impression.
They got to be good right away. And you know, I think they know that more than anybody, that I've got to make an impression because this team's got 2 first-round picks.
Okay. All right, let's move on here to Segura talking about Dylan Gabriel as a guest on a show here, and we'll bring this up. You're watching The React with Pete Smith and Brad Ward, post-draft evaluation and direction for the Cleveland Browns in 2025. Here we go.
Dylan Gabriel, what do you think, or what's your understanding of why the Browns loved him so much, where you were saying after Cam Ward, he was their second quarterback on their board?
Yeah, he was the target. You know, he wins the way.
Do you believe that? Second on their board?
Shador or Dylan Gabriel?
Dylan Gabriel.
No. I mean, I think if Jalen Milroe at 94, they would have taken him.
Right. Okay.
So no, I think if Jackson Dart was there at 33, they would have taken him.
So maybe fourth. You think they had him above? Do you think they really had him above Shador on their board?
Yes.
Or was this just a? Because this felt like it was just like, let Stefanski pick his guy, and this is Stefanski's guy.
Well, I mean, then that's their board. I mean, if it's Stefanski's board, that's their board. So ultimately,
okay.
No, I don't think I at best fourth through that lens. Maybe lower than that, but definitely not second.
You agree this is a Stefanski pick, though, right?
If it's not, what are we doing? Like, honestly,
yeah.
At what is Andrew Berry going to turn to Kevin Stefanski and go, "This, I'm giving you this guy, suck it"? Like, no, of course not. He's gonna, this collaborative process. Like, it would be a disgrace if they didn't let him do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hell, given the amount of Jim Schwartz picks we know about, yeah, it would be insane.
Yeah. Okay.
Kevin Stefanski, at least in my understanding of him, wants a quarterback to win. Great decision maker, accurate from the pocket, can throw on the move in both directions. He's very tough. They love his pocket movement. And one of the things that Kevin Stefanski told me was, we kept watching the tape. We kept being like, where does the height show up? Because that's the knock on him, right? If Dylan Gabriel's 6'3", he probably is the number 2 pick in this draft, to be perfectly honest with you, everything else being the same. He started more games than anybody in college football history, 63. In 3 different programs, he's had seasons where he's thrown for 30 touchdowns with 6 or fewer interceptions. He's thrown more touchdowns than anybody in the history of the FBS. He's played a lot of football. He's very mature. And while a lot of people talk about the pre-draft process of Shador Sanders, you can ask a lot of people around the league, and I've heard this from quarterback coaches on other teams as well. He had the best pre-draft process of anybody. Just mature, gets it, so good on the whiteboard, completely understands the concepts, understands the playbook, understands what he is being asked to do in the offense. And so they saw a guy that they thought could be a very efficient ball distributor and operator of their operation and of their offense, and think that what he excels at is what this system requires a quarterback to excel at.
Now, I'm not an old man, but I've been doing this long enough. No offense to Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, or Kenny Pickett, and it's an open job. People are going to want to see Shador Sanders play, especially with what happened at the draft.
In some ways, it's a good thing that he went here, and I think in many ways, Shador has become a very sympathetic figure, because that was fair or unfair, and I think probably got a lot of bad advice and handled things differently, and he acknowledged that. That's a very public humiliation. It is unique in that he is a much better talent than what his draft position afforded him. We're going to see what that learning curve is for him, right? I think that he will be given every opportunity to be successful here, as will Dylan Gabriel. So he'll be given the chance. Fans will want to see him. They're going to get to see him, I'm sure, a lot in the preseason, but he's going to be given what he earns. because that's really the way it is now. It is a competition. You have three people who are going to be very hungry to make a career for themselves. So these guys are all going to get opportunities. And I think really it's going to be a cream rises, type situation. And Shedeur, I think, he is a great ball of clay, a lot of talent. And if he can come in and execute the operation of things, I think he has a very good chance to play this year.
Okay. I don't believe that if he was 6'3", he would win the second pick in the draft.
Agreed.
Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback position, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There are certainly Kevin Stefanski clearly among the people who champions Dylan Gabriel. Check the Mike Renner. There's a lot of guys who like Dylan Gabriel. There are a lot of people who don't. Seemingly at every stop he's been at, that program wants somebody else to be the quarterback. He's seemingly always been second choice.
Yeah.
Maybe not at Central Florida, but certainly at Oklahoma. And then even at Oregon, obviously he excelled there. But he didn't come out. He stayed an extra year, longer than most people would. And Oregon ultimately is waiting for this Nate Moore kid to be, take over and be the dude. Like they had that sort of in the hopper. And in a world where I think Dylan Gabriel could have stayed even another year, I think they would have been like, okay, we're ready to move on at this point. Like that's not, that's not to say that Dylan Gabriel can't be effective. It's just we've seen, and he's not the first guy to do this. And there have been guys who have been everybody's second choice who then went on to be successful in the NFL. Baker Mayfield was one of those guys. Like, yeah, he Cliff Kingsbury, one of the many things he's done wrong in his career was obviously, didn't care to care about Baker Mayfield as a prospect in his program. But that fact remains. And I don't think that's an issue of height. I don't think if Dylan Gabriel was 6'3", that Oklahoma would have wanted him to be the quarterback there more than the guys they've had. I don't think that if Dylan Gabriel could stay another year at Oregon, they wouldn't want Nate Moore to be the quarterback there. I'm fine with them going that route and Kevin Stefanski believing, no, I really like this kid, so be it. I just think at some point we are getting a little bit hyperbolic with how good he is, and we overrate height because if they have the belief that we haven't seen height be a problem for him, so be it. Then it's not a problem. I will be very curious to see if it is a problem when he's throwing over the heads of DeJuan Jones and Jack Conklin and those guys and Cornelius Lucas. I mean, they're going to have at points two tackles who are at least 6'7". So if it's not a problem, great, then he's going to excel. But again, I think it's a little bit rich to say, and I understand why he's doing it. That's fine. Why, if you say he's 6'3", he's the second pick of the draft, he'd still be an overage prospect. There's still some other things there, but I'm here for it with the guys who love Dylan Gabriel and the people who are championing him, because I hope they're right. I hope they end up being right. He's not to my taste. Baker Mayfield was more in line with how I view it, and we'll see. Maybe when I go back and watch, when I go deep dive, and this is what's going to make these things take forever, is I got to do two freaking quarterbacks who played an insane amount of football. That maybe I'll come out going, man, Dylan Gabriel is really, really good. But having watched him in college, I was sort of, he's a really good college quarterback. I don't know how much that's going to translate to the NFL, but hopefully I will come out being like, wow, I can absolutely see it. I'm here for Kevin Stefanski being right. I mean, that's why he's here. I'm hoping he's absolutely right about this.
I answered this question in ATI, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it about the left-handed aspect of this. Is that overblown, or I mean, will it be an easy adjustment to make? I mean, obviously it changes his blind side, tackle. How do you have to adjust any of the run schemes or anything like that, because he will always roll to his left? How does it impact you?
If we're talking 15 years ago, it's probably a bigger deal. At this point, you already have to deal with TJ Watt coming off the right, or the offense is right. You already have to deal with some of the best pass rushers in the league over there. you have to be really good at pass protection on both sides. So that part is immaterial. And for somebody who has argued for DeJuan Jones to move to the left, it wasn't about pass protection. It was about run blocking.
Run block.
The run game is ultimately where I think your offensive line is dictated. And granted, rolling out might be slightly different in certain respects, but ultimately, I don't think Dillon Gabriel being left-handed is going to change his handoff or limit him in that respect. So ultimately, they're going to run the ball where they want to run the ball. So that part is meaningless to me. The only thing where I sit here and look at left-handed quarterbacks being weird is for receivers. It can be goofy for receivers to catch the ball spinning the opposite direction. But in general, left-handed quarterbacks are largely not a thing because the guys who are that good at throwing the ball are playing Major League Baseball. And if you believe that Dillon Gabriel could throw a football 74 miles an hour, what could he do with the baseball? He'd be on the mound making a whole lot of money, throwing probably 100 miles an hour in Major League Baseball. He cannot throw 74 miles an hour or whatever the hell it was. So no, I don't think it's a big deal at all anymore. Again, 15, 20 years ago when offenses were more suited to a true blindside protector and an old school right tackle, it's a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Does it maybe put a little more pressure on a Jack Conklin or those type of things? Maybe. But ultimately, teams are going to rush how they rush. They're going to find the weakest point and attack that way. And ultimately, for Dillon Gabriel, more than likely, the teams that are going to want to get pressure are going to want to do it up the middle.
Yeah, because of his height, right? And so the you mentioned it, and I had mentioned this too in my answer, that it does change the spin on the ball for receivers. But it's more so like tracking it, right? Because it'll go kind of fade the opposite direction than what they're typically used to, correct?
Yeah, I mean, those things get used to. I mean, honestly, one of the weirdest parts of having a left-handed quarterback is coaches get weirded out by it because they're so used to everything working a certain direction.
Yeah.
Once they get over it, it's not a big deal. We've seen left-handed quarterbacks. I mean, if Dillon Gabriel is Mark Brunell, who was left-handed, everybody's going to love this. So that part is it's weird for receivers. That's the one thing where because of how fast the ball spins. When a quarterback's really going from one to the other can be a little bit goofy for them in terms of ball tracking. But if Dillon Gabriel is ultimately able to win a starting job, he will get enough reps with these guys that it shouldn't make a big deal. Overall, I think it's a non-factor. It's just weird looking.
I've heard multiple times what Jeffrey just said in the chat, and I want to know if you think it's true that Dillon Gabriel has a stronger arm than Sanders. Do you think that is true?
I don't know. I think Dillon Gabriel has an understated arm. I don't think he has a great arm, but it's stronger than he gets credit for. And I think part of that because he is short. To compare, I've said all along, Will Howard has wuss arm, but he got a lot of benefit of the doubt because he's huge. And then ultimately the draft rolls around and the NFL's like, no, he just got nothing on it. And that's why he went in round 6 or whatever it was. I think when you have smaller quarterbacks, there's a little tendency to sort of underestimate the ability for them to put velocity on it. Maybe I'll have a different opinion going through and watching it, but I know he can. Again, the people who love Dillon Gabriel will fight to the hilt, say he's got a pretty good arm. I suspect that's accurate. Is it better than Sanders? Maybe. I think Dillon Gabriel is largely just ahead of Sanders in terms of developing the technique that's ultimately going to allow him to drive the ball better. Sanders does not have that right now. And that's one of those things where I'm very curious to see if, one, he can stick, if that's something he can ultimately get it, because he needs to. He legitimately needs to be able to drive the ball better to survive in this climate, unless the dome is going to be ready sooner than I think, and they're building it in secret like the Death Star. So that part, genuinely curious to see how it goes, because the NFL and and the coaches that deal with this stuff and the biomechanics and all that has gotten better, that has allowed these guys to sort of build velocity. So I think Sanders, again, I think he's largely maxed out physically. I would be very surprised if he's able to gain a meaningful amount of muscle on his frame, but I do think the possibility is there for him to drive the ball better with hard work and training.
Interesting. All right, let's get to this last video like we always do about this time, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And they're talking wild trades here today. Let's get into this.
From living for me. Gun violence is inevitable for their own episodes by searching out some stuff that's been get legs online, and then everyone in Brown's world is talking about it. So I figured
and then they disappear a week later.
we'd at least discuss it for a second.
It's a fun thing to talk about.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, according to NFL Notification, which has put out some real stuff in the past and has put out some stuff that's been debunked in the past.
Okay.
The report was, and I would love to show it to you on Social News Desk, but Social News Desk is not working today because it stinks.
Okay, go ahead.
The rumor is, according to NFL Notifications, the Dolphins have been calling teams in desperate need of cornerback help. One team they've talked to is the Browns regarding Greg Newsome, a player they're open to being on the table with trading is Jalen Waddle. So in this hypothetical world,
yes.
If it was Greg Newsome plus something,
I do.
For Waddle, is that a no-brainer for the
Of course, but there's no way on earth the Dolphins would do that.
That the Dolphins is doing.
Why
especially with the Tyreek situation.
Why would
like,
they?
There's
Why
no
would
way.
they? Why would they do that?
There's
Why would
no
they
way.
trade
You
Jalen
would trade your young best wide receiver away
for a mediocre slot corner?
There's no way that this is
who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year.
I mean,
Waddle makes more money, so they would be opening up some money and helping the financial side of things. But I agree with you.
Why would they care about that now?
I agree. Listen, I'm just bringing a rumor to you.
And man, I got.
Of course, we don't make that trade,
bro. I got another corner if you want it. I got one on. I got 5 on a left guard if you need it, right guard, whatever. I got a couple things and a pick. What you talking about?
Man, I know they were able to get the second player in the second round and another first next year, but don't you wish they had Travis Hunter right now?
Look, man.
I shouldn't have brought that up.
It's still like it is really still like you ever at the same time be trying to talk to 2 girls and then one of them play you off a little bit, but she obviously has the first round grade. And then you go for the second round talent, and the second round talent is like, I've been trying to sign to your team since I've been starting here. Yeah. Like, and then you sign them to the deal, and then like 2 weeks later, first round draft pick come up and pull up and
you
be
throw
like,
the second one back to the
side.
side.
Hold on, why didn't you tell me you was going through something at that time?
Yeah.
That's why you didn't call me back. You be hurt. That Travis Hunter, it don't matter. You could be in a great place, in a great relationship. I love where I'm at. But that number 1 pick, that always sits in your mind.
It's only going to hurt if he actually produces.
But then you got to be forced to hate.
Nah, I'm not hating.
No, I mean, but you got to be like, at some point, you got to be like, nah, you can't have 1,800. Nah, you can't get 20.
All right, this is getting out of control. It's just a wild concept, right? Of that's not real. They would never move off Jalen Waddle. I don't think. Would they? Aren't they shopping Tyreek Hill currently?
Well, I mean, Tyreek Hill's contract is problematic enough. They have to get a bunch of money with that. They're just sort of boned on this, and I don't know that adding a $13 million corner is going to help them in that respect, regardless. So I mean, it's. Unless the Dolphins are trying to blow this thing up and start over, which, I mean, I don't see why they would do that. I mean, let's put it this way: Mike McDonald can't afford it. They've not even made he hasn't won a playoff game in all this time. They paid Tua a whole bunch of money. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And if Jalen Waddle was truly available, the phone would be ringing off the hook. There'd be all kinds of teams trying. I mean, the Chiefs would probably be all over this thing because they still need more weapons. The Patriots would give up all kinds of stuff to get a wide receiver on their team that's worth anything. yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure if the Browns are in a hurry. I know, look, we do this every year. The Browns are interested in trading Greg Newsome. They didn't draft anybody at corner. I didn't think they would. It's not a very good corner draft. They've got to at least get some sort of peace of mind in that room before they can sort of move him. I know they don't want to, necessarily want to pay him $13 million, but you at least know he can play that position in the slot. And then you know that if Denzel Ward gets hurt and misses a month, as he often does, or Martin Emerson misses a game here or there, that he can bounce out. And if Martin Emerson, for some reason, is not good after having a nightmare year, and I expect Jim Schwartz is going to spend the entire training camp with his foot squarely placed in Emerson's ass, that Newsome can at least bounce out there and give you a credible outside corner. So, it all sounds really good to trade Greg Newsome because get out of that $13 million. But I just don't know if the Browns are there yet, unless they're basically, again, they're treating this season as sort of, we'll see what happens. But I don't think they are. As we've talked about before, I just don't think Kevin Stefanski can afford to sort of waste a year. Whatever you think they're going to be, I just think he's at real risk of losing any credibility in the locker room because he's running out of guys who are going to have been here when they won.
Yeah, I don't think they can at all do that. That would be a nice luxury to figure some things out maybe for the future, but I just can't imagine that. And I do think Cam Mitchell has shown moments of being pretty good, but not enough to trade off of Newsome.
I like Cam Mitchell. I like Miles Harden as a prospect. I like Anthony Kendall, who they brought in, as a free agent. I like some of the things they've done there, but they got to find somebody who can do it. I mean, the game is so often needing three corners on the field. Bengals are going to be forcing you to do that. The Baltimore Ravens do a lot of things that are going to force you to three corners, and there's all these other teams that have a million wide receivers. You got to be able to cover that. And the Browns can't be, their front is really impressive. Even if I hope they can get another pass rusher. If they're if it's, they're able to just pick them apart, then, there are going to be times where it just doesn't matter.
You said you hope they can add another pass rusher this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would like another pass rusher because I wanted Abdul Carter, then I wanted Donovan Ezraku. I don't see, I'm desperately hoping that Isaiah McGuire can take another big step forward. I love Isaiah McGuire, and there's a lot of reason to believe he can. I do believe that the Browns need somebody with more juice off the edge in pure pass rushing situations that can give Lamar Jackson, make him nervous, that can chase down Joe Burrow, that can do those type of things. Now, and as unlikely as it is, Aiden Huntington has that capability, but it's really hard for me to go, no problem, pencil him in. So I still sit here. It would not surprise me if we're into next year's draft or talking about next year's offseason, and I'm sitting there going, man, I would love to get another edge rusher opposite Myles Garrett to sort of fill out that room to feel better about it.
Any of these names do anything for you? Von Miller, 36 years old.
Why the hell is Von Miller coming here?
Okay. Matt Judon?
No.
Preston Smith?
No.
Za'Darius?
I love Z, but the problem is his best pass rush is from the B gap, and the Browns have 35 defensive tackles now. So, I mean, I would certainly not hate getting Za'Darius Smith, but they really need somebody who can rush from the outside effectively. And maybe he's content to do that, but he's been at his best when his ability has been to slide into the B gap. So if they're cool with it and he's good with it, and they're just going to say you're an pure outside rusher at this point, great. You're not going to get me to hate re-signing Za'Darius Smith. I just don't know if he gives you that thing.
Tryon Shoyinka doesn't do it for you?
I mean, he's got an opportunity to prove that he can be that guy. It just
he hasn't
his
so
track
far.
record has not shown that. So, look, I mean, I'm intrigued by what he can do. He's never played in a defense that's going to allow him to do what he's going to do. He's always had a little bit more responsibility there. So I'm genuinely curious to see what he can do there. But look, the Browns were seriously considering Abdul Carter. Let's make no mistake about this. Everybody wants to make this into a thing where, this was a done deal with Travis Hunter. Like, Abdul Carter was absolutely a part of this conversation. There's a reason for that. So they are not so overloaded on the edge, arguably the second most important position in football, not to consider taking that kind of game-changing presence. So I don't sit here and look at anything as sort of locked up in that role. In the same way that, I'm curious to see what Joe Tryon can do, but it's the same thing where I sit there and go, yes, there's a world where Isaiah McGuire can be that guy, but he's got to do it.
Brandon Graham?
No, he's 45 years old at this point?
37. John Kaminsky.
He retired.
At 29?
Medically retired.
Kaiser White.
No.
There's nobody really. DeMarcus Walker.
No, that's not what he is.
Okay. Jalen Reeves-Maben.
More of an off-ball guy.
Dennis Gardick.
The Barbarian? Yes, I would consider Dennis Gardick. He's weirdly efficient as a pass rusher. That's Steve Palazzolo's guy. Check the mic. He loves Gardick. I'm very curious to why he's still out there, because the Arizona Cardinals were awful at pass rusher. He was like their one dude, and yet they were not excited to bring him back. So he's just a curiosity to me. So I would consider Dennis the Barbarian Gardick for the Browns as a
the
flyer.
Barbarian.
That is what they call him.
Shaq Thompson.
No, he's outside linebacker.
Yeah, but these guys, I mean, it's the same. It's all the same, right? Can you get
He's a real linebacker.
Okay, all right. Matravius Adams.
No, that's the dude the Steelers finally said we're done with you.
I know. Jerry Hughes.
He's
Jack's
cooked.
guy.
He's cooked.
Isn't that who Jack wanted last year?
He's wanted him. I think he wanted him a couple years ago.
Yeah. Dwayne Smoot.
No, he might be interesting. I don't think he's really done anything.
Trying to look for younger guys. James Smith Williams.
No.
Nick Vigil.
Off-ball linebacker.
Yeah. Shaq Barrett. Tyus Bowser. Carl Lawson.
I didn't know he was available, but I could see a world where let's start here. He's not signing until July.
Right.
I don't know how healthy he is or if he's gotten anything back, but that's at least what he does.
Yeah. That's why I was pumping my fist. I found a guy. All right. That's about it that I can find. James Houston.
He was here for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's an option. He had that one very nice year for Detroit in small doses and hasn't been able to sort of repeat it.
I think that's about it. Damone Harris, Atlanta, 7 years.
No, I don't know.
No. Eric Banks.
No. This is ultimately why I push so hard for it to get in the draft, because these guys just aren't out there.
Yeah. Carl Lawson sounds like the best option if you get a healthy report on him, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and I think if they're going to go that route, I think they would just sign Z. But and again, I'm fine with that. But that's why I'm very curious to see what Aiden Huntington can do when you're 280, low to the ground like that, and you can go 4.6 and are that explosive. I'm very curious, because if it can work, wow, that's where you can get crazy about that. I don't think the Giants are going to move him. They they proposed a terrifying prospect of putting a package together where they're going to have Thibodeau and what's his face on the other side, rush, and then have Abdul Carter play sort of a spy and just absolutely destroy things, either going up the middle or when quarterbacks sort of get outside, chasing them down. And that's, even when people were talking about the notion of, this whole thing, like the Giants, wouldn't want Abdul Carter, and, you just cannot have enough of these guys. So if I was them, that would be what I would do. I wouldn't trade Kayvon Thibodeau until I absolutely had to.
All right. There it is. The React. Post-draft 2025. I'll have something out this week on how we are looking post-draft and some thoughts about the direction of the Cleveland Browns. And a Things I Think I Know written version. And Pete is full into his comprehensive breakdown of the draft, correct?
It'll be over the course of the next couple of weeks. Mason Graham will start tomorrow, Swissinger Thursday, Judkins Friday, and then we'll wait till next week. For the other guys, because those quarterbacks are going to take forever, and there's a shit ton of data, and courtesy of Jim Coburn at All Pro Football Data, which is the best there is in terms of that stuff, which really helps to illustrate what the player has done, what they can do, what's possible for them.
Pete the Barbarian Smith.
Listen, read them. They're the comprehensive draft reviews are worth it, but they do take a lot of work.
No, absolutely read them. Read everything over at the OBR, but certainly, absolutely read those.
You can check my last year's class if you want to, and I've done, obviously, last year's class I did the OBR. Previous ones I've done other places, because not long ago somebody was challenging something about Nick Chubb and preconceived notions about him being a valuable, as good as he was. And for me, he was easily the second best back in the draft. And the article went right there and pointed out all the reasons he was absolutely a freak and could very well be a phenomenal player and has been. Or you can look at Siaki Ika and see all the reasons why I thought he was going to suck, and it was proven right almost immediately.
Yeah. We had literally a line of people come through on All Eyes on Cleveland of draft experts saying, do not take Siaki Ika that year. All right. Any parting words, Pete, before we get out of here? Because Garage Beers is up next, and they're going to yell at me for going over again. So, anything?
No, just enjoy Garage Beers.
Enjoy Garage Beers. Read Pete's comprehensive breakdowns. Read my Things I Think I Know, and keep it locked at the channel for all things Browns as we move forward. And thanks for hanging out with us all weekend long at the Draft Cave. We appreciate it. We did record numbers, so we appreciate you all being there and hanging out with us. Thanks so much for watching The React. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Get your beers and head to your garage. We are out.